Well, folks, we are right here in the ruins of the ancient city of Thyatira. And we had just come a little while ago from Pergamos. And it's an interesting city, and it's got history in the Bible. We find when we read the letter to Thyatira, it's the longest of all the 7 letters. And it represents the longest age, from 606 to 1520 BC. There's not a lot here to see, but the question that we want to ask and answer is, why did God choose this city to represent the Dark Ages? And the Church Ages book answers that question and gives some reasons, but I'd like to share with you a few things that occurred to me as we've been coming down from the mountain fortress of Pergamos down into this broad valley. And the Church Age book says that this city was the least noteworthy of all the cities of the 7 churches. Well, honestly, I think I would say it's the least noteworthy today. Coming from Pergamos, that was so high and grand, here Thyatira is in this valley. It doesn't have a fortress. It would be a place you wouldn't go unless you maybe had a job there. I can imagine nowadays in Pergamos, somebody might put a resort there. It's a beautiful place. This place is just rather common. And when we look at the history of Thyatira, it has a long and plodding history. And beneath my feet right here is an old Roman road. And many, many armies trampled through here over the centuries. And they say it was a garrison town. It would be maybe a blue-collar working town back in ancient times. And as I look at the city today, I'd say it still is a blue-collar working town. Back in the days of the New Testament, they had tanners or potters or bricklayers. Lydia, the seller of purple dye, was from this area. But one of the things that is instructive to us is, in order to have a job and to work, you had to be part of a pagan trade guild. And you had to be part of the pagan religion in order to work and have a living in this blue-collar town. Well, that certainly represents the control that the Catholic Church had over the economy and many other things during the Dark Ages. So for the original Christians who lived here, there would be a tremendous temptation to compromise. You need to work, you need to pay your bills, you need to do these things. It says in the letter to Thyatira that you tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. And Thyatira had a prophetess in their pagan religion. And that became typical of the false church and the control that it had. False worship. What else did Jezebel do? Well, back in the Old Testament, she held the first recorded inquisition, where she falsely accused Naboth in order to take his vineyard and give it to her husband Ahab. The Inquisition, that was what happened in this age. So many of these things tie together. False worship, Inquisition, but in spite of that, there was a group of true believers. And the letter to them says, I know your works, and I see that the last are more than the first. So what's happening in this age is, even as the false church gets worse and worse and descends down and down and down, the true church is getting better and better and stronger. And they actually paved the way through their sacrifice in the face of all these challenges for the Reformation age that would follow. So there were great and strong believers here in the first church age in the time of this city, and there were great and strong believers through the Dark Ages. This city, Thyatira, I can very much see how all the situation around us, the geography and the history, all come together to make it clear why God chose this city to represent all of those things. Sometimes we get instruction from unusual things, from grand things, but in this case, we receive instruction from common things, and we thank God for the believers that stayed true in the city of Thyatira.